Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Daily Noose with Tim Lynch. I'm Tim Lynch. So, today we're going to do one final episode in the Rhode Island trilogy. That's right, it's kind of like the New Jersey trilogy, but different. Remember the New Jersey trilogy that was like, was it Clerks, Mallrats, and Chasing Amy? I think there may have been a fourth in there too, but that wouldn't make it a trilogy. Anyway, back to Rhode Island. This one's not as sad, thank God, because you can only do so many shooting cases. But in a way, more pathetic. But before we begin, remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you never miss any episodes. Give me a like or a dislike based on what you think. Either one's good for me. But leave a comment. Again, if you love it, leave a comment. If you hate it, leave a comment. And if you hate someone else's comment, leave a comment. It's good that way. Anyway, all right. So we're going back to Brown University. And this is, I am finally up to date now. This was a text my buddy sent me this morning off a Twitter feed, X feed. And this is from Polymarket. And I'll put this up here. Polymarket posted, new Ivy League professor suspected AI cheating, ordered an in-person final, and saw average scores plunge from 96 to 48. So just in case you're more like me, when you're like, what do you mean in-person final? So when we took tests, you actually had to go to the building and go to the class and take your test. It might be at the time of your test. It might be at 7 p.m. at night, but you actually had to go and take the test. Now everything's done online. So they take their tests online. They do their projects online. They do their homework assignments online. Everything's online. So you saw this massive thing. They said, all right, at home, you did great, 96. You came into the test 48. And my first thought was, okay, well, that's honestly not too surprising. My next thought, of course, was, what course? What was this? And after about half a second, I was like, well, it obviously has to be something objective, right? Something like a legit course, right? It's something in science or business or math. Because it ain't one of those silly courses. And why did I say that? Because you're like, well, this is silly. Wouldn't it be in a silly course? Well, when you think about the silly courses, sociology or anthropology, English lit, lesbian interpretive dance in sub-Saharan Africa, like those classes, they're all goofy gradings anyway. At home, in class, they're all going to get grade inflation and go through the roof anyway, because every answer is a right answer in those classes. Unless it's conservative, but conservatives are too smart to actually give the right answer for that way. But again, those classes wouldn't certainly call anyone out. The opposite. So what was it? What class was this? So I'm going to read to you now, and it's a bit lengthy, but not too bad, about what really kind of transpired in this situation. This is from Akash Gupta, from @Akash Gupta. Good for him. He got the first one. And he wrote, 40 out of 86 Brown students, so about half, a little less than half, scored a perfect 100 on their midterm. Remember, this was online, not in the classroom. Then the professor moved the final in person, and 22 of those perfect scores never showed up again. I mean, right out of the gate, right? Hey, how'd you do on your midterm? 100%. How are you going to do on the final? I'm not showing up. I mean, it's obviously preposterous. And by the way, don't forget, Brown University. Do you know how hard it is to get into Brown University? I mean, if you're like white or Asian, straight, conservative. Anyway, it's hard. It goes on. He'd suspected AI cheating from the start. The take-home midterm was deliberately harder than usual. Again, the midterm was deliberately harder than usual. Yet the class averaged 96 when the historical range is 65 to 80. Some answers contained odd phrasing that matched what ChatGPT produced when he ran the questions through it himself. I could only imagine what the odd phrasing could be. I mean, maybe it's just a grammatical thing, but, AI gives us Black George Washington too, so I would have loved to see what that was, or at least have a group of people doing shots for the funniest odd phrasing you could think of from ChatGPT economics final midterm. Anyway, Roberto Serrano has taught economics at Brown for 34 years. He filed no accusations. He announced the final would be in person, count for half the grade, And if the two distributions didn't match, the final alone would determine the grade. So again, let's say you got a 98, one of the losers and only got a 98. And then on the final, you got a 42. It's not like he'll average 98 and 42. He's like, I'm taking the 42 and it stands. Anyway, then the exodus. 27 students never showed up. 22 of them had perfect midterms. So 22 with perfect midterms just didn't show. Of the 59 who did show, 19 failed. Several signed the exam and turned it in blank. I don't even know what that's about. The average fell from 96 to 48, the lowest in the course's history. He never needed a plagiarism detector. The cheaters identified themselves by walking away. A grade distribution became a confession. Here's the part nobody's sitting with. Serrano proved it. He sent the distributions to Brown's dean and provost. The provost never responded. Must be flippin' nice. The academic committee's reply amounted to calling it, quote, a wake-up call, end quote. Now, I'm going to predict this right now. They're not going to change a thing. In fact, it might get worse. They might say, you know what? In-person exams are just too hard, and we need to never allow that again. This is the way these academic people think. Trust me. The students who bailed before the final walked away clean. Every university in America is now grading two populations, students and students plus ChatGPT, on one curve. The honest kids in Serrano's class watched a 96 average get set by machines, then set a real final against it. The cheaters lost nothing. That's the incentive structure now, and it grades itself. So, now just so you know, I don't have anything against AI per se. I actually think it can be an awesome tool. And I don't really have a horse in the race. If anything, it could hurt me in my work. Certainly, it can be used as a tool to make my work easier, faster, more efficient, more effective. On the other hand, it could completely take away some of the things I'm doing, kind of, leaving me without a job per se. But I do have a huge issue with AI in education. To me, AI is very similar to Cliff's Notes. You remember what Cliff's Notes were? I don't know how old you are, because there's several of you. Thousands, I think. But anyway, here's what Cliff's Notes looks like. So Cliff's Notes were basically a study aid to be used with literature. Usually, you read in high school, maybe college, but in high school, you read Cliff's Notes to help you with an assigned paper or help you learn the book more or understand it more in depth, to get a better score on the test or just understand the book better. Now, you're probably all wondering, did I use Cliff's Notes? Hell yeah, I did. My brother went through school a couple years before me. He had like a stack of 30 of those babies just waiting in his closet. So when I started to read the book, my first thing was go to that closet, get his Cliff's Notes, and then I could use them too. And those horrible days where I read a book he didn't read, I actually had to go buy the book. And I had to go buy the book, I mean my mom had to buy it for me. Anyway, but I used it as God intended. I read the entire novel. Then I used the Cliff's Notes, and I used it either as a reference or just read the whole Cliff's Notes, again, as a tool. Might help me write a paper, might help me remember things better for the test, whatever, but I used it the way it was supposed to be used. But that's kind of what we're seeing with AI now. But it's worse. So it's not like, the kids aren't using textbooks. I mean, textbooks don't even exist anymore. That's a whole other episode. And they're not even like cramming and memorizing Cliff's Notes knowledge to be used in a testing situation, right? They're learning absolutely nothing. They're just getting a question, looking it up on the internet, and writing down whatever the internet says. It's like bringing a calculator to an addition and subtraction test. We're not using it as a tool to help us get the final answer through problem solving. It's just giving us the answer. And I can tell you, this is just part and parcel with everything we're seeing in education going down the tubes. And I get it. When I say education's going down the tubes, I'm not like saying people are purposely trying to destroy it, like communists in the economy. They're trying to do it because they're trying to make education easier. And I'm fine with making things easier if it's also more effective, if it gets to the point better. But it's not effective. I think one of the first things that I saw in education that has really been harming things is that they're trying to take away memorization, right? So there are certain things you just had to memorize for a test. You had to memorize rules or dates or people or equations, whatever it was. You had to memorize certain things and then use those things you memorized in the test, or analyze those things you memorized in the test. And their thought was, well, we don't really want to make them memorize things. We know in real life they could always just look it up as long as they understand it. Then they can always look up the actual memorization part, and it's really not necessary. The problem, though, is if you don't even know something exists in the first place, or you did and you forgot, well, then you don't even know it exists to look up. And I'm trying to explain this to people because I'm seeing it affect, students and residents and fellows in the hospital. And they're like, oh, well, you're just a dinosaur. You do things the old way. By the way, the people calling me a dinosaur, some of them are like 20 years older than me. Whatever. But their philosophy was, not to make people memorize, which, by the way, making your brain memorize things, it's a nice little brain exercise. Their philosophy was, let's just make sure they can think and reason, and they don't have to memorize. The problem is they're not doing that either. Because let me tell you again, in the medical world, the students, the residents, the fellows, until they get to me, they don't reason. They don't critically think. They don't even question. They just take everything as someone's truth. I wonder why. And you have to call them out on that or they'll never learn. People don't have truths. People have opinions. There's only one truth. We may not know it. We may think we know it might be wrong, but there's still only one objective truth. And I think part of this downfall, not memorizing and learning facts, I think part of this downfall is, again, not memorizing, learning facts, but combining it with the fact that they can't think either, right? So where does that come from? Well, at least in undergrad, maybe earlier, they start learning phrases like my lived experience or my truth. So when a patient comes in and says something patently false, so, hi, doctor, this morning I was a little upset because I had a third leg for about half an hour. Now the student goes, oh, third leg for half an hour. And then they come to me and they present the case like, well, this is a 27-year-old female who said she had a third leg for half an hour. And I go, wait, stop. Do you really think she had a third leg for half an hour? Does that make sense to you? And then they go, oh yeah, I guess not. But the problem is because they've always been brainwashed to just accept everything that someone says is true, there's not even a trigger that makes them go, huh? Right? Like I literally gave a lecture, and I still have it, gave a lecture a couple of years ago called Things That Make You Go, Because I will get stuff sent to me to review or cases to evaluate or whatever it is, and I'll read it. I'm like, huh? But the people sending it don't have that. So you got a combination, right, of young people that don't know how to critically think or reason, and they certainly have no fund of knowledge. And now we have AI that can skip it all. And frankly, we're getting retarded. And maybe that's why these young kids think communism is the way to go, because they certainly don't have the fund of knowledge to know what happened. And they certainly can't critically think why it's a horrible idea. So I'll leave you with this. This is a post to this story I just talked about in response to the original story. And I'll put it up here. And if you're listening in the car and not looking over, it's a picture of, I don't know, it's a chimpanzee or a tiny orangutan or something with a nasal cannula for oxygen, with a gloved hand holding the back of its head like it's in a hospital and dying. And it says, me, in 2040 dying on the operating table because my doctor used ChatGPT to pass medical school. And they're not wrong. And with that, I bid you adieu. Until next time, go out there and tell someone to use their fucking brains. I'll see you next time.